Hey guys, first off, I'm gonna say sorry if you see me looking down a lot. I do have sort of like a teleprompter going down here. Today we're gonna be talking about my Harry Potter theory video. So I hope you're all feeling
wicked.
And in this video, we're gonna be talking about one of the most infamous Gryffindors ever. And no, I'm not talking about
Mr. Potter.
I'm actually referring to
Albus Percival Wulfric
Brian Dumbledore.
So again, you may see me looking down quite frequently. It's a long theory. I did a lot of digging online. I didn't find anybody else's information on this, and I'm hoping it's totally original to me. So with that said, let's jump into it. As many of you know, Dumbledore was claimed to be one of, if not the most powerful wizards of all time. He was the only person that Voldemort truly feared. And if you've been keeping up with the Fantastic Beasts series, spoiler warning, then you know he's ultimately the wizard who defeats Gellert Grindelwald. Despite these known facts, we also know that he succumbed to the curse set on the Slytherin Horcrux ring.
Oh, unpleasant to behold, isn't it? The tale is thrilling, if I say so myself.
What seems so strange is that somebody so powerful as Dumbledore would succumb to what should be a fairly obvious curse. Dumbledore had an incredibly strong suspicion that the ring was a Horcrux. Knowing that this was
Very dark, very powerful.
magic, he must have known that it was protected by some strong hexes and enchantments that would have kept him from destroying it. And that should have kept him from putting it on because he should have known that it would harm him. I mean, I would think that someone would want to figure these things out first and come up with some sort of counter curse or something to destroy it without it reflecting back on you before doing so. I know I certainly would. So this got me thinking, what if Dumbledore meant to die? So hear me out. Since Harry Potter's birth, Dumbledore was aware of the prophecies surrounding him and Voldemort. He was aware that
The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. For neither can live while the other survives.
in the words of Professor Trelawney, he was aware that Harry would have to be the one to kill Voldemort. And if he had any idea that Voldemort had made Horcruxes at this time, he may have even suspected that Harry himself could have been a Horcrux, and therefore would have to die. I don't think he would have been completely certain of this at this point, but I think as he discovered more about the Horcruxes, his suspicion of this would have grown more and more. You can see this pointed out in the memory that Snape shares at the time of his death with Harry.
On the night Lord Voldemort went to Godric's Hollow to kill Harry, and Lily Potter cast herself between them, the curse rebounded. When that happened, a part of Voldemort's soul latched itself onto the only living thing it could find, Harry himself.
So, if Harry had to defeat Voldemort, but also had to die, what does this have to do with Dumbledore dying? Just sort of thinking of the whole picture, if Dumbledore was around and was the most powerful wizard of the time, people would probably expect him to be the one to take out Voldemort. After all, Voldemort knew Dumbledore was a more powerful wizard, as did most of the wizarding community. But remember, he couldn't be the one to defeat him. It had to be Harry. With that little inconvenience aside, what the heck would people think if Dumbledore just let Harry get killed? I mean, he's just a kid. Do you think people would really understand that Dumbledore knew Harry had to kill Voldemort, but Harry also had to die? Do you think he actually knew that Harry would be able to come back after he died? I'm not sure that he did know Harry could come back. Also, if you're looking at it from a pure plot convenience standpoint, the scene where Harry goes to the afterlife and sees Voldemort's body and then talks to Dumbledore probably couldn't have happened if Dumbledore hadn't already died. J.K. Rowling doesn't really make it clear as to whether or not this is Harry's subconscious, or if he really is talking to Dumbledore.
Is this all real? Or is it just happening inside my head?
Of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. Why should that mean that it's not real?
And I think that was on purpose, but if it really was him talking to him, I don't think that he would have been able to do so if Dumbledore hadn't already died. So, let's, just for kicks and giggles, say that people were okay with Dumbledore letting Harry die. Let's say that they knew that Harry had to be the one that killed Voldemort, and they just sort of let Dumbledore be outside of this whole scenario, right? Even if that were the case, I still think there are other motivations for Dumbledore to die. I think Dumbledore had some sort of prophetic skills similar to those of Grindelwald, or that he had been messing around with time.
3 turns should do it, I think.
He always knows how situations are going to work out, and he always seems to know exactly what to do to make those situations play out how he wants them to.
Good luck.
A lot of people accuse Dumbledore of being manipulative, but I think the way he's so successfully manipulative is by knowing what is going to happen in each situation, being able to twist things to work out how he wants them to. He also knows what to expect of people before they even have a chance to show their true colors. We see this in his interaction with Tom Riddle, or Voldemort as a child, when he knows about the things in his armoire that he keeps as trinkets from those kids that he had tortured in the cave.
I think there's something in your wardrobe trying to get out, Tom.
He plays it off as being this kooky, wise old wizard, but in reality, I think it's more than that. I think he's already seen or lived through some of these situations through time travel. It also doesn't hurt that he knows how to make himself completely invisible, which he explains to Harry in the Philosopher's Stone when he's visiting the Mirror of Erised.
Back again, Harry?
This would also help him to avoid the consequence of being seen when using time travel, which is something that he warns Harry and Hermione about in The Prisoner of Azkaban.
You must not be seen, and you would do well, I feel, to return before this last chime. If not, the consequences are too ghastly to discuss.
He also explains how to use the time turner, and so we know that he's aware of time travel and how to do so successfully. So if he can travel through time, he would know the outcomes of these situations because he would have already lived through them. I know what you're thinking though.
What an idiot.
Time travel? Really? Could you think of a bigger plot convenience? Well, given the underlying storyline of the Cursed Child, which I know it's not canon and you can't refer to that to talk about the Harry Potter series, but I don't think it's that far-fetched because we've seen time travel and time turners and all that referred to in the main storyline, particularly in The Prisoner of Azkaban, as well as in the Cursed Child storyline and in some of the writings on Pottermore.com, which are done by J.K. Rowling. But if that's not enough, let's look at the other approach, the power of prophecy. Now, in many ways, this is similar to time travel, except your mind is looking forward. You're not actually experiencing these situations or these events. But when I'm talking about the power of prophecy, I don't think he's like Professor Trelawney.
Have I said something?
I don't think he's making these life-altering, huge predictions. And instead, I think he's more like Grindelwald, where he can see situations that may affect his life. More specifically, I think he can see parts of the future that allow him to make decisions on how to get through challenging situations. I direct you to some of the happy happenstances that occur in the books. For example, when Quirrell sends a letter from the Ministry of Magic to Dumbledore, and the kids go through all the trials in order to get to Quirrell, in order to get to the Sorcerer's Stone and save it from Voldemort, because Harry believes Voldemort is after it, which he's right. And then Dumbledore just happens to arrive at the nick of time, just after Harry has fought off Voldemort, in order to bring him to the hospital wing and save him. Also, you can look at the Order of the Phoenix when he arrives 3 hours early to Harry's trial, even though they sent him a time that was much, much later, probably in hopes that he would miss the trial.
You got our message that the time and place of the hearing had been changed, did you?
I must have missed it, but by a happy mistake, I arrived at the ministry 3 hours early.
Pretty unlikely unless you knew this would happen. And why would he still arrive late? Because he did still arrive a little late. I think he knew this was going to happen. I think he was trying to build tension and not let the people overseeing the trial know that he knew this was going to happen and show up on time still. Everyone's proceeding with the trial. They think they're just going to stick it to Harry. And then all of a sudden, here comes Dumbledore out of the blue. How the heck could he know that this was going to happen? He's the witness for the defense, and he calls Mrs. Filch forward, who witnessed what was going on. And so they were caught off guard. Fudge, you could see in the movie, was totally caught off guard that Dumbledore showed up on time. So the real question is, even if he knew the future, how did he know that he himself had to die? What does this have to do with the whole storyline of defeating Voldemort? Well, if he knew the future, then he knew that Harry had to die. He knew that Nagini and the rest of the Horcruxes had to be destroyed. He knew that Voldemort had to be defeated and that he couldn't be the one to defeat him. He knew that Voldemort would try to obtain the Elder Wand, which he would get from killing whomever killed Dumbledore. I think this is the reason that he assigned Draco to the task, because he thought, well, I can just wipe this kid out easily, not a problem. And he knew it was unlikely that Harry would defeat Voldemort if he possessed the Elder Wand. Additionally, he knew he was going to die anyways. Snape told him that he may last about a year. And with all this being the case, I believe that he allowed himself to die prior to the year timeline that Snape quoted him, and prior to himself finding a counter jinx or counter curse to the curse that had been put on him. Because if he's the most powerful wizard, he probably could have come up with something. And I think he did this because he saw his death serving a bigger purpose in defeating Voldemort. When Harry accepts that he himself has to die, it was because of what he saw in Snape's memory. Likely if Snape had never been so hard on him, hadn't agreed to be the one to kill Dumbledore and actually killed him, hadn't saved Harry, Ron, and Hermione with the dough Patronus, which we then sort of see it linked back to in the memory he shares with Harry.
Always.
Hadn't continued to work for the Dark Lord pretending to be on his side, Harry probably wouldn't have seen all of these memories, wouldn't have discovered how and why he needed to die, and wouldn't have accepted that fact. Unfortunately, Dumbledore hadn't explained everything to Harry prior to himself dying.
I thought Dumbledore would have told you something worthwhile.
It may have been that Dumbledore knew sharing too much too soon wouldn't have had the same effect on Harry. Telling him all this before so many people had already laid down their lives for him, before Harry himself had struggled so hard to find all the Horcruxes and destroy them and to defeat the Dark Lord, and before he felt like he was completely out of options, before he felt like there was no other choice but to give himself up, he probably wouldn't have accepted this. I mean, even knowing all that, it's very, very hard to say that you would accept giving yourself up freely, that you would go down without a fight. So essentially, if Dumbledore hadn't died, he wouldn't have helped Snape to keep his secret identity with Lord Voldemort. He wouldn't have taken himself out of the equation of allowing Harry to die and defeating Voldemort himself. And Snape may never have been in a situation where he could have shared the rest of the information that Harry needed to learn
At the proper moment.
He may not have shared his memories, he may not have shared his relationship with Lily Potter, he may not have shared the fact that Harry had to die and had to allow Voldemort to kill him.
It is the only way.
Unfortunately, most of this does hinge on Dumbledore knowing that Harry was a Horcrux from the start. So, what if he didn't know from the start? If you recall the scene when Harry finally gets Slughorn to reveal the truth about Voldemort learning about Horcruxes from him, then you may recall a few critical details. When Dumbledore explains to Harry that a Horcrux can be literally anything.
Could be anything. Most commonplace of objects.
Harry wonders how you can discover that that object truly is a Horcrux.
A ring, for example.
It's at this time that he goes to reach for the ring. And Dumbledore says,
"Leaves traces."
When Harry went to touch the ring, it reacted to him, implying that he was a Horcrux. There's two ways you could read this scene. Either Dumbledore is looking at Harry like, oh crap, because he's wondering if Harry realizes that he's a Horcrux, or Dumbledore himself is just now realizing that Harry's a Horcrux. I'm really not sure which one this is because J.K. Rowling kind of leaves it open to your interpretation, but I think he already knew. What makes it a bit more complicated is J.K. Rowling was not very clear when the conversation between Snape and Dumbledore actually happened. In the movie, it appears that the conversation between Snape and Dumbledore happened after he was already cursed by the ring, but still implies that Dumbledore knew for some time that Harry was a Horcrux. If he didn't know from the get-go, I'd suspect that he at least knew from the time of the Order of the Phoenix, because he knew that there was some sort of link between Harry and Voldemort.
Thank you. Next we need to...
Look at me!
Regardless of whether or not he always knew that Harry was a Horcrux, he certainly knew prior to the time where he decided to allow himself to die. And I think he knew prior to going on the hunt for the Horcruxes. If nothing else, he knew he couldn't be the one to kill Voldemort, and he suspected being around would hinder Harry from being the one to do so. With all that in mind, it seems Dumbledore must have peered into the future and seen how the struggle would play out and figured out a way to line up these events and bits of information in a way that would result in Harry being the one to defeat Voldemort once and for all. In my humble opinion, Dumbledore absolutely needed to die.
Avada Kedavra.
It's a sad truth, but a truth nonetheless. Well, everyone, I really hope you enjoyed that theory. This was my very first one. I spent quite a long time thinking about it, wondering why such a smart and powerful wizard would ever die from something so seemingly obvious. I'm sure many of you might disagree with my theory, and people have their own opinions on the matter, but again, this is just what I got from taking another look at this situation. So please stay tuned for more videos. If you like this video, please hit the like button down below and share it with others who you think may be interested in this theory. Please hit the notifications icon if you want to hear more from these types of theories and from the other Harry Potter stuff that I'm going to be covering on this channel, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, I'm still here.